I am very grateful to Jane and Anke for hosting us for the third evening in our conversation series. And tonight we are focusing on creative artistic experiences. So this is a relaxed environment for everybody on Zoom as well. We wish you could share soup with you. Thank you, Patricia, for the Christmas soup. It's so good. Oh, well, we are on mute, so that explains. Welcome to the third conversation series. We're enjoying the Christmas soup, Patricia. We're all loving it. I didn't realize we were on mute. And we are doing creative artistic experiences, and that's what I was talking about. Here we go. Okay.
I think I was really contemplating how to start this evening, but as we are such an intimate, beautiful group, it looks really festive, like from our leader, the white blouse, the green sweater, all of the black. I feel inspired to really start with something that is maybe a little bit beyond us right now, but one should always teach towards the level that is aspired. So let's be aspirational this evening. And it's a little quote by Albert Sussman. In our last study, we studied the 12 senses, and we relied heavily on Sussman's insight. And it's about creativity and creation. Every creation, in fact, is that which has been released from the ultimate source, such that the creative element is transformed into the creation. This is the shortest possible formulation of the origin of the universe. And now you know why I mean inspirational, because I am not implying that we are doing anything here tonight that will come close to creating the universe, and yet, as every creation is a manifestation of this creative source, this ultimate creative source, we are going to create the universe. We took a little bit of the liberty of deciding what we felt was appealing to you tonight to bring, because creative artistic experience is such a broad topic. And I will bring a little bit something that hopefully is inviting you to rethink your everyday life and your image of yourself in whatever you do. And after this evening, you see yourself as an artist, a perpetual artist in everything you do. And Jane felt so inclined to take one snippet out of the artistic experiences that your children have on the weekly and daily basis in our settings, and she chose one that is extremely dear to her heart and where she has a very particular talent also. And then we will engage in making something that supplies this artistic endeavor that Jane will talk about. And I will not let you know what it is, but maybe you can already guess, but I will hold you in suspense. And so, when we think about artistic activities, obviously we often think about the very obvious artistic activities, right? There are painters, there are sculptors, there are dancers, there are musicians, there are writers, all of these artistic activities. And many of us think, oh, but I am not this, and I am not that, and I was told when I was a child I have no talent, and I can never do this. And then in the end, at one point, if we are lucky enough, we realize that every human being is an artist. So in our first evening, I spoke a little bit about that we as parents have to be three things, if you recall. We have to be scientists, we have to be artists, and we have to be visionaries or philosophers. So tonight we will speak a little bit more of us being these artists. And what is really for me very important is that you can acknowledge that everything you do is an artistic endeavor. Everything you do is something where you create. Steiner had one quote about aesthetics and about creativity in relationship to parents or educators, which I want to share. He said, in order to become true educators, and for me that's the same as saying in order to become true parents, the essential thing is to be able to see the truly aesthetic element in the work, to bring an artistic quality into our task. If we bring this aesthetic element, we then begin to come closer to what the child wills out of its own nature. So we are not artists, or not bringing the artistic element to make things look pretty. So if you look around here, I think things look really nice, right? Beautiful, at least for my aesthetic sense. If you come from different cultural backgrounds, you would find a different way into it. This class obviously also takes into consideration that there are 3, 4, 5-year-olds here, and not 16-year-olds or 17-year-olds. That would look very different then. But it is cared for. And in our last evening, we spoke about caring for the environment and what that really means. And at times when I have to clean up over and over again and do the same thing, I'm losing a little bit that momentum where I say it's an artistic element. But when I bring seasonal renewal, I always feel I create anew. So over the last 3 weeks, we made our moss gardens, and when you stand up later, we'll see them over there. And there is a real artistic element to it. The children are participating in putting the moss in, and now the fairies tonight, they brought the candles. So tomorrow we'll put the candles and we'll put our golden star onto our moss garden. So when you do these things, you feel an artistry. So then we were in the garden, and you see we have all of these nomis, and nomis are part of our life this holiday season. And when we go to the garden, we found so many pieces of wood, and they all look like nomi caves. So you will see them over there. So we are working on them. We are cutting a base, we are hollowing them out, and that's an artistic endeavor, right? And we bring that as adults, and it comes out of our everyday life. So if we can appreciate that in us, I think we can feel encouraged to really look into how we live in our environment and how we care for our environment with an aesthetic tendency and an artistic inspiration. So your children will pick that up because your children work out of imitation. So when I find a piece of wood in the garden and I think, wow, this is fantastic, what a nice piece of wood, and there are all these holes in it where the worm is already dug through, and then we have our little rasp and we're working on it. And the children really take up that kind of the mood that I do have. If I would not have this excitement for wood, like other people don't have that, they have an excitement for something else, the children would pick that up. So I'm not saying that you have to have one certain kind of excitement, but I'm saying that it is wonderful for young children and actually essential that the adults around them have that inspiration. They have that creative impulse in everything they do, even if they at times have tired moments like we all have as parents, and we do not want to straighten this out again or clean this up again. We still can find in the artistry and in the response of the children, we can find an inspiration to really lean into this artistic endeavor. So the art in early childhood, and I think it goes even into life, is really the art of living, right? How we want to live. So today we made a Christmas soup. So how do we make a Christmas soup? We first looked into the refrigerator. There was a fennel from last week. There were a few celeries, plenty of carrots, we have potatoes and yams. And then we said, okay, let's see what comes. And there came more celery, more carrots, more potatoes. So in essence, the fennel was the creative impulse that was left over from last week. Oh, we also had one of the squash that had come before, not the one that came late today, which we can put into the next soup. And then we cooked the soup and we chopped the vegetables, and it was a really very, very joyful morning for doing this. And then we cooked the soup, and it's so nice. We heated it up right now. Soup is better when it's heated up, right? 1 or 2 times ideally. And it really tastes like Christmas soup. And the little boy this morning, he was so into it, and he said, "Miss Anke, we have the Christmas soup, and here we have the Christmas baguette." And then when we got our lunch, he said, "This is our Christmas lunch." And for him, it was really truthful, right? Many years ago, I would have been so disappointed because I didn't get any special vegetables for the soup, but it's really not needed. What is needed is a creative impulse to see the soup as our Christmas soup. And not that we live in a world where we are living in famine right now, but things can be simple and everyday and still feel to us elevated. And that's an artistic approach that we have into living our lives. So even if you fold a paper napkin in a certain way, or you straighten out the plate in a certain way, or today we had a visitor and he put out the spoons and he put them the wrong way. So he put them with a spoon, the thicker part of the spoon towards the edge of the table, which we usually don't do. So obviously there was a complaint, and I said, "Oh, I do like my spoon this way." And it is a surprise when I come to my table and I see the spoon in a different way, because it awakens me to something that is different and that I actually can embrace. Because whoever told us that the spoon has to be in a certain way. And they were consistently all in the same way. So there was an intention to this approach. So to see this artistry in our everyday life. And by doing that, we transform actually our environment, not only by changing it, but by seeing it differently. Right? We see it as something that we take care of and we create, and it is our own. I always say that to parents, that our home is the parents' creation. And when we talked about discipline, I said, you are the author, which is also an artist, right? You write the story of your daily life. So here in our classrooms, what we really love to do, and we spoke about it last time when we spoke about the temporal environment, we love to create a beautiful rhythm. We are not just arbitrarily adding one activity after the other, but our activities breathe. We breathe out, we breathe in. We breathe out, we breathe in. And there is a steady rhythm that we have, and at times the out-breath is longer, and at times an in-breath is longer. And that's artistry, to adjust what we have as a form and to make it flexible for the moment. So there we are artists, not only for the physical space, but also for our temporal space. So for children, as I said, and we spoke about in many of our meetings, children learn out of imitation. They are open sense organs. Everything penetrates into their physical body. So when they see us as adults, for example, they see Miss Jane here who is struggling there with the materials that come to her, and the needle is stuck in the thick felt, and there it came through. So she's really struggling with materials, and she's striving for artistry. When a child sees that in an adult, when a child is surrounded by adults who consistently wrestle with materials and wrestle with tasks that are beyond them, the child will imitate this will impulse. Because when I struggle, when I want to do something and it doesn't come out right, and I have to unravel my knitting, or my stars that I'm cutting out are not symmetrical enough, children see that. And what they will imitate is my will to make things good. I'm not saying here things have to be perfect, but my will to make the next step, my will to become better, my will to learn something new, my will to know that the spoon can be in this way if our friend wants to put it down in this way. So children not only imitate how I fold like a cloth with them or how I speak, some really repeat our intonations, but they also imitate our inner being, our willingness to engage. And for that, artistry is very good. It is also good for us as adults. I don't know about you, but when I can create, I always feel a little happier. Sometimes I do something nice and it really makes me feel really good, and sometimes it doesn't come out so nicely and I don't feel so good. My next path to conquer will be cooking, because I never looked at cooking as an artistry, but I looked at it as feeding my family, so now I will look at it as an art form. And I'm really excited to conquer that and to work with taste and with textures, and so it's a nice artistry to do. So we as adults also benefit from engaging in artistic work. So other than this bigger picture of that we are artists in everything that we do, there is also the more narrow picture, what are artistic endeavors that your children engage in and which you also can and want to allow them to have in their homes. One that is very, very important to us is here singing, right? There's a big impulse of singing the songs, and we sing in the streets, and we had our winter sing, we had our Lenten sing. Every circle we have many new songs that we sing. That's a very big impulse. For adults later on, it's also older children, it's playing musical instruments, which will come in, which is a mastery. I never was allowed to learn a musical instrument, really to the degree that I would say I can really make music with other people, but I feel that this would be something that I would have liked to do. So obviously, when you have your own children, you try to make up for your own shortcomings. Or you want to provide to them what you were deprived of, however you want to say that. So that's another aspect. Here in early childhood, we use sometimes a lyre, or we use a pentatonic, what's it called?
Woodwind or xylophone?
The xylophone, the pentatonic xylophone. Yes. So that's the singing. We also move. Dance, movement is a form of an artistry. And obviously one that comes to us all the time is drawing. And I cannot really speak highly enough about having children being exposed to very simple drawing material and being able to draw every day. Because drawing is a little bit for children what for some adults writing is. You write your own story on a piece of paper. It manifests itself in a drawing. When they get a little older, you can actually see the stories in their drawings. When they're younger, we sometimes cannot decipher their drawings, but they sit there and they say, this is such and such, and this is happening here, and it's very, very important drawing. Painting is another wonderful artistic experience, especially for the color experience. We do sculpting here also, we're modeling, which is another of these experiences that we offer, and we do sew, right? The children this year are sewing with professional chenille needles, and everybody made their sun, you see them lined up there? Somebody already made a moon, and we will continue with that. That's something that's ongoing for the months to come. And they are very happy to work on these things and to engage in these kinds of artistry. So there is one form that Miss Jane is now talking about, and if I'm passing on the baton to you, can we end your talk with a hefty universe quote? Yeah, just to be really aspirational.
Yes, Anke. But before we do move on, perhaps if there's any discussion or questions on what you spoke about more generally that I don't want people to have to hold and remember any questions or comments. I have one, which is I think that I like, this idea of talking about inspiration, that when we're creating, it's as much the attitude of our being when we're creating as it is the actual creation that the children really take up and imitate. And I think one thing I think that's important to think about is how when you're struggling, when you're striving and creating, and you make a mistake or are struggling, how that's acknowledged. And with what level of frustration and trauma, so that attitude also passes to the children, because it's very easy for a child to struggle. They're learning, that with dexterity, they're learning their motor skills are not what we have, so they're likely to experience even more frustration than we do on a much more regular basis. So I think that learning to manage frustration and watching how you do that is super instructive. It's something that you see so many children with I can't, or it's so hard. And we see that often as teachers. I've seen it from my own children. And it's not necessary to say, oh, you can. It's, okay, I have trouble too, but here's how we work on it. Like those little moments of persistence through frustration. Not, but okay, I'm really working on it. Maybe I'll put it down for a moment, I'll come back. Show them those moments, and I think they'll really gain something from that. Anyone else want to comment on
One of the things, just listening to you, Anke, thinking about how do we bring this artistry, for me, like into our homes, I noticed what I kept thinking was like a real mindfulness, a real single-minded, being extremely present, being open to the world, but also meeting it with this intentionality. And I don't know, I'm gonna get tearful. I just find that incredibly hard to do as a mother. I feel like just almost a sadness listening to you talk, because there's always multiple things going on that I have to be planning, that I'm doing, worried about the kids, like what's happening now, or and I don't know. Is this accurate? Is this and the way that you're talking about the rhythm of the classroom? Like, I know that we don't have that rhythm in our lives, and I don't know. It's so beautiful and aspirational, and yet it feels quite challenging.
So maybe I can say a few things about that. I think one thing that's very important is to not feel that you have to embark on this by yourself. Because you're not. You are in a community, and one can sit down with friends and others and look at things and see what one would like to work on. So if you feel you're really interested in rhythm, it would be nice to approach that. But I think it's very important to not approach it with a feeling of guilt and shame, but with a playfulness. Art is focus and release. And in release is a play. And we forget that at times because we are on treadmills and we have to do certain things. So you have to find a little space for this playfulness, and you find one aspect that you want to tackle, and you ask your friends, how do you do that? How do you do that? Or you ask an expert and say, come and sit with me for 1 or 2 hours. Tell me how that is. Look at what I'm doing, if you feel so inclined. For your own inner artistry and approach to it, do you know the books by Julia Cameron? Like from the 90s or so, that Julia Cameron wrote this very, very famous book, The Artist's Way, The Path of Listening. So she has these 2 tools. One is very daunting to me, but I want to try it now again, which is the morning pages. But the other one, which she says many people struggle with, is one that I really would like to recommend right now, and it's called the artist state. So she says once a week you take an hour, or if you have 2 hours, 2 hours, and you find something that you would love to do, whatever it is. Could be going, the first time you might go and just go to a steam room and say, I want to do this, even if you don't think it's artistic, but it's playful. And you do that once a week, just for your own replenishment. So you take a date. So when you're now in your home, for example, when you feel things very dreading, there might be something that you like. So in my life, all of a sudden, at one point, I got a white orchid. My children were very little, and you know about the orchid. It's the angel orchid. It's the one where I always look when it blossoms, and I always think, I want to be like that angel. I want to hang myself out there and know that I have something behind me. I want to have that gesture of flying. So I talked about the angel orchid, so I got angel orchids. I have, I think, like 10 on my windowsill. And they always bloom in the summer, and then the blooms go away, the blossom goes away, and then around the Christmas time, the shoots of the new blossoms come. So now, except of one of my orchids, they all are shooting new blossoms up there. So it's exciting. It's my little thing, right? And whenever I come down in the morning, I greet my orchids and I say, it's so nice that you're here. And I don't have to feed them other than water, so I can handle it. I couldn't have a dog or a cat, it's too much for me. But the orchid, so you might have something, whatever that is, experience that. I also like nice mugs. So I recently, for my birthday, which was really not such an elevated day, I went and I got myself a mug that I really like. And every morning when I make my tea and I have my mug and I drink it out of this beautiful mug, I feel I am a creator in a way. And obviously, most of my life is not that elevated. But it is very beautiful to find these moments, these mindful moments where you can feel good about something. This is why I like to make little toys. It's nice for me to knit play strings, and then it's nice for me to see the children play with the play strings. And something that looks so simple is becoming so important and multi-purpose and all over the classroom. And so I like these things when out of my artistic endeavor, however small it is, and for full transparency, I would never, ever buy a stretched canvas and oil paint and paint like my husband does, because I would think that it is a waste of material. Because this painting would come out like nothing really major. I would never end up in the Met or the MoMA. Why would I ever do that and spend $300, $400 on materials for something that's irrelevant? So I still have to learn. But I surrender to more accessible materials, and I know that I feel good when I can make something, even if it's only this little tree. And you will see I will not use it now because it would give Jane's thing away. I made 3 of those, and when I look at them, I really like them all together. So we will make things also after it, but maybe that helps a little bit.
And I think that it's also, when I see the artistry of my colleagues and the amount of mindfulness and reverence they're able to bring at this stage in their lives, and I'm striving at my stage in my life, and a remembrance that Ms. Anke has been able to craft and hone this and what the children are doing for several years. Decades. And so that's also the reminder of, it's not how to do this, it's how do we do this? How do we do this? And so that's why I would say, if there's one moment in the day, pick the moment, pick the thing, pick the cup of tea.
I have a practical question. So I've always been like a very creative, crafty person. I have not done any of that since I've had children, besides drawing alongside Wolford. And you know, George and I have a joke, because he got me, I have a whole soap making kit. I used to make soap, and he got me a book on how to like elevate it. And whenever I say I want to start a new craft, like start something new, he's like, we'll put it right next to the soap making. No, it's like a running joke that we both do, because it's just, we haven't been in that season, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, what I'm inspired by with you is like, you make these things alongside our children.
Yes.
So that is something that I don't want to, it's not impossible, right? And I don't want to feel like this must be an after hours thing for me. Because my new craft that I would like to start is knitting. I keep telling George, I want a knitting kit in my stocking. If he doesn't hear it, I will buy it myself, but I'm waiting. So anyway, but here's the thing, whenever I try to do something creative, even if it's drawing with Wolford, right?
Don't say even, it's a very important.
No, but he
So
he will start drawing on my drawing. He will, like he has to be on top of it.
Okay,
He won't work alongside.
No, but this
me.
will cultivate. You cultivate that.
But like, how do you do these things in
I
class
sit
without the
and
children
we all-
literally like trying
Oh no,
to?
they are. They are.
Yes, so that's what, like, how
And
do
then I
you?
work with them. I was
Okay.
drawing. We all have learned to draw on our own paper.
Yeah, you just
We
don't
learned
see the
that.
5 extra hands.
We wrapped presents, and that was a lot of fun because he's really into cutting, and he was able to follow my direction, and we did that together.
Yeah.
But like, I just can't see myself being able to do something like this alongside him.
So
how am I
first
looking
you
at it?
find,
How
you
should I
find,
look
you
at
have to find things that you can do alongside them.
Mhm.
So, for example, needle felting is nothing you want to do alongside. First of all, it looks very harsh. Second of all, it's a very sharp instrument, and you
Yeah.
don't want to do that with them. So, you have to find things where they can learn that you are working on something. Like, for example, when I rolled up all of these balls of yarn, right? So then Sol comes and he takes a ball and he runs through the classroom, and at the end there's no more ball. So he takes a whole yarn and it's a big pile, and then we untangle it over the next 5 days because we have nothing else to do. But this way, I don't have to give instructions.
Yeah.
This day, I don't have to say don't do that. And this way, they learn what happens when you unravel a ball of yarn. You start all over again. Sometimes we are supplied with yarn that other people do not want to unravel.
I'm a big believer in the decoy ball of yarn. You have an extra one, and then the one you're working with, and that they have the decoy.
That's also a good idea. Yeah, but you have to be open, and you have to give this time for growth. And yes, for your own endeavor, you can have something that you do when they are not around, or where you say, George, this is my afternoon, and I'm going to take a class at the Art Students League, and I will do model painting, live model painting or drawing. So that you also can do. But with the children, that is the art. That is the art of living that you experience. And I think what we often do where we run into trouble is when we give instructions and when we have to do things where we have to tell them what to do, because that's not successful. If we just can do things and work alongside them, then it's less friction.
Yes.
And then you have the times you have to give up. But when they, for example, play, I always take my knitting. And I can knit 8 stitches this way and 8 stitches that way. And when I do it long enough, I get my nice play straight, right?
So I'm looking at it wrong. Like, this was helpful because I'm imagining they're all like in class with our children and everyone's just doing their thing, and it's like the sound of music and like
There's no sound of
happening.
music.
Um,
minute of that.
So I think that's my own striving for perfection.
No, but we
Keeping me
get
from
to
time.
these moments when we have
Yeah.
group activities.
Yeah.
Then we get there and we cultivate that, and we are maybe now at a stretch of 15 minutes, and then I hear the first voice, I'm done. So then, but in kindergarten we will be up to drawing focused for 35, 40 minutes, right? So it grows. But otherwise, we are role modeling what we want them to do, and Jane said that so nicely when she said that we have to live with our frustrations there also, and embrace it. But you see, you can make at home, you can easily make a whole basket full of pom-poms.
Yeah.
I mean, pom-poms never run stale. And if you have friends, you can always give them a basket of pom-poms. So everybody will, once they know how to play with them, will embrace it. To knit a play string takes a long, long time if you use a whole skein and you make the nice big ones. So you can knit all the time play strings. And through that, you also will become much better in your skill. And then you work yourself to the next level, a horse or a donkey or a pig or whatever comes next. And then you will be very sad when your children no longer want your handmade toys. Maybe then you can knit them socks.
They start making them for others.
Yes.
I wanted to add, because last year, when Grandma was in Anke's class, we were talking about scissors, and she's like, just give him scissors and a bunch of paper and see what happens. Don't tell him what to do, just give him. And that was like the most liberating thing ever. And so I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. I have to work. Here's a pile of different colored paper. Here's scissors. Like, awesome. And he was just cutting away, and then as he was doing it, he realized, oh, if I cut it this way, it makes this shape. And it was like self-discovery, and I didn't do anything. And it was because there were no rules. It was so liberating when you like mentioned that. And so with drawing and everything, I started approaching everything the same way. So like, if he starts drawing on mine, it's like, oh, look what happened. Like now it's turned into this. You know, it's just like very kind of fluid, just letting things happen. And
at times you have to give rules, so you cannot cut the hair with his
He loves cutting right now, and that is how I wrapped. He helped me cut the paper, but then he wanted to keep cutting, so all the scraps of wrapping paper.
Yes.
Yeah. You know,
Because this is what we do. When I cut out the shapes that we saw, then they're left over felt. So they cut it into pieces, and then we make soup, and it goes into the kitchen, and eventually it has to be cleaned up. But
well, he loves to sweep and vacuum, thank goodness, because there's lots of tiny pieces of paper everywhere.
Yeah, and that's
The
what.
paper is good mess, yarn bits, little bits
all
of
good
cloth,
mess,
that's all
yeah.
good mess.
yeah, and sometimes when you have old
Yes,
clothes,
and
for
that's what-
example,
I don't.
you have old clothes, you can have scissors and they can cut it.
That's
Yeah.
very good.
I don't ever bring a project into the classroom that I have a personal vision for. Because it won't, unless it's a play string, which I can do 8 stitches. But if I have a personal vision for a piece of artwork, even in the kindergarten, at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year it's different, but at the beginning of the year, they will draw on my page accidentally or on purpose. So I have to let go of this is a very important vision, and I'm just creating alongside them.
And that's a vision in itself.
Exactly, but it's with my adult perfection brain is over here, and here I am just getting to create together.
And it's very nice, because then you become playful.
Yes.
And it's no longer so serious even for you.
Yeah.
Then you have, other than the focus, you have the release.
Yeah.
Right? Focus, release. You have to breathe through that.
I think that's a good segue into what I wanted to talk about specifically, which is creativity and through storytelling. And it's something, when I was a young woman, a young lady, young girl, I loved to write, but had very sad experience in maybe like 7th grade or something. In the early teenage years, where a teacher made me read a piece of writing in class, and it was a very emotional piece that I had a strong connection to. And my classmates just made fun of me and laughed, and and it destroyed my confidence as a storyteller. However, when I had children, I at first, relied heavily on books and reading to them. They were read to like all the time, and they loved it. But after like a little more time passed, I realized that sometimes the most rich stories I could tell were the ones that came from life, or that were for them in a specific moment. And so I opened up my creativity to that. And at that same time, I was learning how to teach. And I had a class of students who were so interested in horses, did all this horse play with like galloping and things. And so I started to tell to that class stories about my best friend when I was about 11, who lived on a farm and was like you know, the kind of girl who jumped on a horse to go and fetch the lost cow. And that was her life. And so she had all these, and I, through her, and she taught me how to ride, and I had all these experiences with the horses. You know, I drank horse milk. We went berry picking with the horses, and the horses got into the berry bucket and kicked it over, and so many little stories, so many wonderful little stories. I started telling them to my class, and they were, you know, it became they were just so hungry for that, for these real stories that happened, and we wanted to know every detail about this girl and her life. It was so exotic, this Australian farm girl, and so, you know, they would say, Jane, a horse story. Every time we sat down at the table together and we'd done eating, they would, a horse story. And so my children too stopped requesting so much, their storybooks, and they would say, no, a story from your mouth. I want a story from your mouth, not from the page, you know? And these were not, I mean, they're not great literary feats, not at all, but just little things. Little moments, little ways of sharing things that had happened, you know, that I knew about, that I'd experienced, or whatever. So I wanted to encourage you as parents to sort of unlock that in your lives, little stories. And sometimes sometimes we use props or puppets and things to tell other stories. And sometimes we're way too exhausted to tell stories. But I did list a couple of storytellers here that have recordings of, you know, just learning to listen just orally to stories is also just so rich for them, because you're providing your own images. It's you know, really develops in your imagination. Nobody's telling you what it looks like. You don't have to see it. Maybe you could draw it later, how you imagine it, you know. So I did give you a little list here. And then I wanted to talk about in my classroom, as well as those stories, I've always loved bringing puppet shows and stories to the children. And anyone who's been in the Maples classroom has seen that. And I think what it can do for children through that power of imitation is teach them also how to be storytellers. You know, and I'll often intentionally use toys from in our classroom as puppets, or I'll leave the puppets around afterwards. They always get a turn. That, you know, I've never seen where children are, as a group, are not attracted to pick up and then try and tell some of that story, or just to bring it into their imaginative life. So our craft activity is puppet making. So these are simple finger puppets. In Waldorf, early childhood, they have the standing puppet. There's some very traditional forms of puppets. There's a marionette with silks and a standing puppet, and, you know, lots of little things. Where did I put that bird? Some of them are super simple. You know, this is a piece of wool tied into a knot, but it is also a hummingbird. And then the finger puppets are something that is a nice one to start with, because even if you're not an expert, you can do it. if the children can do this, you can also do this. So I guess we could pause again for questions and comments, and then we'll go into puppet making. And anyone out there listening who wants to pick up some puppet materials, we'll probably have some for you. You can ask me tomorrow.
Thank you, Anke and Jane. Alana Cookler, who's our educational director, also offered in the chat when we were talking about frustration tolerance, that Alana has some great resources and articles. And I would say I love you bringing that into it, Jane, and, you know, Anke mentioning that building our frustration tolerance as adults and how important it is for the children. And I see a lower frustration tolerance over the past 10 years, the frustration tolerance has gotten a little bit lower. And I think that's natural, but I so value how we can build that up for the children. And certainly in the classroom, they're getting to practice it a lot every day. So I want to offer that resource, and maybe I can share them with the group as well.
I just want to say I just feel so grateful for Miss Jane and your storytelling and poetry and how much that has passed on and influenced Tio. That's basically all it plays at home as well. And what he's really, really into, imaginary, play. And I think that's a lot of.
Well, I mean, it's like, you know, if you read early educational literature, including outside of Waldorf circles, there's a lot of, like, you know, classifying and identifying different types of play, and that ability to do storytelling, and they call it small world play or role play, like imaginary play, but and figures, you know, using figures. It's not something that comes to every child. You know, it is actually something that is imitated and learned a little bit, and it's such a valuable way to express yourself, express feelings. Yeah, you can act out, you know, everything safely, you know, in a small scale, and maybe in the bigger scale, you don't want to be acting that out.
But I'm glad that you're bringing that up. Not every child goes into that path of, and then sometimes as parents we think, oh, my child doesn't play puppet play or this kind of play, and we will have an evening on different forms of play.
Yes.
And yes, we can be encouraged into, there's something that children fall naturally in, and then you know which other kinds of plays you might want to encourage, or which other kinds of forms of movement. So the less active child you want to get into the more active play, and the very active child you want to get into the more calmer play. There is no one right and wrong, and these are all wonderful things to bring into your home, and storytelling is something that's in the evolution of humanity. It's a golden thread.
I really appreciate, Jane, the highlighting of that, that line, I want a story from your mouth. For my kids, like, when they do something that upsets the other, they have a check-in, but they also say, how can I make it better? And my 5-year-old is always asking the 3-year-old for a story. And, you know, Aiken will tell him a story. And, you know, even will say, oh no, there needs to be a horse in it. And, you know, he'll give some requirements, and Aiken will do, but it's, there is just a deep, and the end point of that story is sometimes whatever the kid has done helps the other child to feel better, and sometimes it doesn't. But if it's a story, everyone's always beaming. And so I'm always focused on the reading to the kids. But I'm just gonna have that like in my mind as a way of an artistry that I can easily offer now every day is a story from my mouth. And then the creating of their own pictures. I've just started reading like Charlotte's Web to my big guy, and that shift to like really creating in his own pictures is really profound. But I didn't know how to do that, and I just forgot. I tell stories. That's how I do that with a little one, because Charlotte's Web is big, too big for. It's even like they're gonna kill you. It's big for even to hold.
Yes.
So.
Did you try Winnie the Pooh?
No.
Oh, I love Winnie the Pooh. It's one of my very, very favorite. And I only got to know it once I moved to this country, because it wasn't in my German repertoire. But it's like, to go to the East Pole. That's so good.
I will do that.
Winnie the Pooh is really nice.
I mean, that is
a really nice
a present that will be under the tree now.
Yeah, I think just to to piggyback on oral storytelling, I was really lucky to be raised by two people who love to talk and tell stories. And but some of my most dear memories are of my godfather who has passed, and that he would tell us stories of Tony the pony, because he grew up on a farm in Canada, and he would fall asleep telling us the stories.
Oh, I've done that.
And we would and in his semi-conscious, subconscious would start to come out in the story. And Tony the pony would be walking through the farm, and then there would be two men sitting on a couch, and we were like, Uncle Dunk, Uncle Dunk, Tony the pony. But that's 28 years ago, 30 years ago that I have those memories forming, and it's, I can still remember Tony the pony stories. So yeah, treasure trove from your childhood. They love to hear about it. If there are animals involved, amazing.
Yeah, of course there are stories you should not tell.
Child age appropriate.
Age
Age appropriate. Yeah.
In our culture, children hear stories or are exposed to stories all the time that are not they're not ready for, or that are, that's something.
But when they are 5, 6, they love to hear when you got into trouble.
Oh yes.
You did mischief.
Oh yes.
Yes.
You have to be careful which mischief you
Which mischief.
reveal to them, but
My husband has this great story about him and his brothers parading around their kitchen with a very stinky cheese, and then saying "Porta salute, sorta pollutes," and they threw it out the window out of their 7th floor apartment. Oh, my boys could hear that story over and over again. The cheese out the window story.
yeah, that's an important thing when you tell stories. You have to really remember what you told. If you make up the story, because they will ask you to tell it again and again. So
And they will know if it's different.
yes,
They will know.
so
They're like, you didn't say this part.
Yep. Yeah.
Got me.
Yeah. They'll remember details.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So thank you everybody for joining us via Zoom. And I'm so close to the camera.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we'll look forward to seeing you and making puppets with you in the future.
Thank you for the soup, Miss Patricia.
Bye.
Night. Lucky us to get the soup.